Thousands of years ago, the civilizations growing around the Mediterranean fell prey to an invader. The city of Rome, blessed with unshakable confidence, a pragmatic philosophy, and the favours of the gods, conquered each opponent they engaged, taking lands, goods, and people as their spoils. The city built itself an empire, and as it grew, the people who could say that they were not living in its shadow became few indeed. Talk of lands that were not impacted by the growth of this world power became scarce, yet there were corners of Europe that continued on at their own pace for a while. The uninviting Isles of Albion were such a place, until Roman soldiers, hidden behind huge shields and scaled by expertly crafted metal, arrived to claim the victories their society demanded. They named the realm Britannia, and took all they could of it. By the time our story begins, they had half of Britannia under their control, with eyes gazing north to the remaining native-controlled lands. They looked not just at the rich mines or fertile fields, but at the hardy peoples who might soon work most productively on Italian estates or African plantations. They raided villages and captured all who did not die fighting. It was on one such raid that they bound the hands of a young couple of the Novante tribe and dragged them south behind their defensive walls. These captives were too scrawny to sell for much. Transporting them to the lucrative markets of the Mediterranean would barely be worth it. Thus, they ended up as prisoners on an estate not so far from their own homes, working the fields and woodlands of a newly built villa complex owned by Helivius Galba, a wealthy Roman politician whose ambitions kept him far from the Britannian backwaters he had bought. They worked alongside people captured from lands far and wide, carefully curated by language and culture groups to make sure there wasn't too much unity among the servile class. It would be this diverse group of unfortunates that helped them raise their children, the first of which their parents defiantly named Rex, a Roman word meaning king, albeit one they knew not how to write. By Roman law, a child of a slave is a slave also. When Rex, and later his sister Regni, were old enough to do any kind of work, they were put to use by the villa master and his team of strongmen. This ever-present group of club-bearing overseers presented a simple choice at every moment of every day: work or pain. Most slaves would see their share of both and more. A decade passed, and then so did the better part of another. The estate had grown, as had Rex, but otherwise life was unchanging. Rex's parents were now freedmen, having served long enough as slaves to be technically freed as per Roman traditions. But that meant very little in reality, for they were still without money, possessions, or the protections of Roman citizenship. From slaves to serfs, it was a scant reward for their services, if any at all. One day Rex and Regni would be granted their freedom too, and they would all leave that den of so many terrible memories, if only to become the de facto slaves of some other landowner. Their freedom would in fact come far sooner and more terribly than they had imagined. The estate may have changed little over the years, but the world around it had been in chaos. The Roman defences at Hadrian's Wall had been breached and mostly torn apart by the armies of the northern tribes. Now it was the Roman villages that were being raided, and until the Roman war machine clanked into action, nothing could be done to prevent it. One day, while Rex had been foraging in the woods, the estate was attacked. Rex heard the noise and rushed back in time to catch a glimpse of the raiders. They were clad in the traditional patterned clothing of the Caledonian tribes. He thought for a second that he and his fellow slaves were about to be liberated, but then he saw clear evidence to the contrary. Slaves, even Caledonian ones, were being killed or dragged away, even when they gave themselves up. He needed to save his parents and escape. He emerged from the woods, ready to make a break for the slave quarters, while the villa's guards brawled with the raiders. Before his foot hit the soft soil of the freshly planted vegetable plot before him, he was accosted by the villa master himself, wielding a haggard sword and a face to match. He demanded that Rex help him escape, but in his panic he had raised his voice too loud. There was a shout, a hiss, and a splat. The villa master choked out a last breath as he collapsed forward onto Rex, an arrow still quivering in his spine. The air was squashed from Rex's body by the well-fed frame and its sweaty rolls now encasing him. The weight was too much for the lad. He struggled, pushing away soil and flesh to get some air, but it took all of his meagre might. He didn't know what happened in between, but suddenly he found himself waking up with a mouth full of wet soil. His legs were still beneath the villa master, now pale-skinned and encrusted with blood. There was a sound like strong wind, but only the faintest breeze moved, bringing with it the smell of the raging fire destroying the villa. Rex realized he had blacked out from the effort of his escape from the crush of his former master. The raiders and everyone they had taken were gone. After some deep breaths, Rex felt able to move. He reached back under the villa master and carefully slid the old sword out from under him. It was heavy. He could barely wield it with both hands, but he did so anyway so that his journey through the estate might feel less perilous. There were bodies here and there of slaves, freedmen and Romans alike. He was blessed not to see any sign of Regni or his parents, but then again, the raging fire in the villa made it impossible to even get close to where they would have been working that day. He waited for it to die down, but as he did, a party of horsemen arrived. Romans, investigating the pillar of smoke leaning out over their domain. If they found him, Rex's few hours of freedom would be put to an end. He had to escape, to remain free, and find out where those raiders had been taking the people they had abducted. The fire was more than anyone could survive. If his family was alive, if any of them were alive, the clutches of the attackers was where they must be. Rex, always quick on his feet, disappeared without alerting the horsemen, moving through the woods and out into the endless pattern of forests, fields and hills that was the province of Britannia. There was only one place he knew of in the land where he might find help, the place his parents had spoken of, lying to the northwest, beyond the wall, the land of his ancestors in the Novante tribe. Rex set eyes for the first time upon the village of Regionium, the farming community from which his parents had been taken. They had always spoken nostalgically about it, but Rex was slightly taken aback to see that it was of a more crude construction than the villa. Not that this was his concern. He pressed on, ignored by the villagers coming back from the fields for the evening. An elder stood in the shadow of a large wooden hall. "Have you travelled far?" he was quick to ask, although he spared Rex little more than a glance. "Not really. I'm looking for something. Someone attacked my farm." "What? Who was it?" Now the elder was interested, as were many prying ears and fearful eyes nearby. "A tribe. A Caledonian tribe," Rex said, shaking his head. Even such a widely cast net was pure guesswork. "Caledonian? Out here? They wouldn't come this far. Wait, boy. Show me your arm." The elder grabbed Rex's wrist and turned it over. There he saw the tattoos the Romans had inked to mark their property. Galba was written above a cross symbol shared by any slave who had been risen in captivity from birth. It was said that it was a mark that demanded a high price for its bearer, which for some was nice to know. "You're a slave. I should have known from those Roman rags. You'll find no help here. Return to your master, boy." Rex explained his situation to the elder and the growing audience to their conversation. "I'm going after them. I just need to know if you can show me the way," he concluded. "What will you do then? Kill them? If I have to. You'll be dead before you can raise those skinny little arms, boy." "I'm still going to try. Surely you understand." Rex looked around at the villagers and drew a few nods of approval from those with the relevant sense of honor. The elder sighed and leant himself on the wall. You were probably victim to the Celtic Warband said to be raiding south this month. Or one of them. They are from the east, and they raid Roman, Novinte and Belgove equally. Lord Vist of their tribe came in person to assure us they would stop. But no. If they took captives, it was probably to Tremontium. Then I shall go, thank you. Rex turned and stepped away, parting the encircling villagers. No, no, no. I won't allow it, the elder said, standing upright again. The path through the villagers disappeared. You'll fall before dusk like that. Stay and eat. You want to be the hero, I can see that. Recover your strength, and show me that I am not letting you go to your death. If you truly are a child of this tribe, that is the least I must insist upon. So then, welcome to Rex Romanum, a Mount and Blade Bellum Imperii mod narrative let's play. We're starting the game as Rex, a lowly slave with very poor stats and very few options as the mod would have it. We're so low in renown that we can't form parties at all, so all we can do is go on individual quests. One such quest was available at the start. We're doing one of the classic train with the peasants quests in the village where we first inquired after the bandits. And as you may know, whenever you complete one of these quests, you automatically get attacked by bandits. So after all the practice fights are over, suddenly we're thrown into a real fight. Our weapon proficiency in just about every weapon is very low, so Rex is very bad at actually fighting. We do have a bit of a tactical advantage we can gain here. We can climb up this cliff as the fight starts to get a height advantage over the bandits, but because they have bows and arrows, they're just going to be cutting us down, so it's actually not all that useful. Another problem we have is that Rex has no equipment. We've got a small utensil for a weapon and no armour. We're hit by an arrow as the fight starts, so our health's going down already. But as we saw, I was able to pick up a stick off the ground, so now we can attack a bit more effectively than with a tiny fruit knife. We have such low polearm proficiency that our stick slapping is rather slow. It looks kind of fast because the combat speed is on maximum here, but compared to the enemies we can't attack very quickly, which means it's easy for them to break our guard effectively, because as we start swinging, if they swing after us, they'll hit us before we hit them. Long story short, Rex is very quickly defeated when he tries to actually fight the enemies. Normally in Mount and Blade, just being defeated, running out of health, means you're wounded, and it has no particular consequence. But in this mod, there's a chance that every time you're wounded, it will be a permanent wound that you can't recover from. We'll see some of those later on. For now, though, it was just a regular wound, so we will recover from this. Back to the fight now. You can see the peasants are down to their last 3 guys, but the bandits are down to their last 1 guy. This guy has an advantage on his side in that he's far away and shooting a bow. His shots are able to take out one of the peasants, then it comes down to a last bit of close combat. The bandit's got a massive cleaver. He immediately kills 1 peasant, but the last peasant somehow defeats the bandit with his tiny little sickle thing there, and that's the end of the fight. We actually won, just about, perhaps thanks to the fact that Rex did do a bit of damage slapping away with his stick earlier on. Triggers a load of glitches for some reason, but anyway. So the bandits have been defeated. No sign of any captives they brought with them, so Rex is still going to have to move on to Tremontium. We have the option as usual to refuse any reward for defeating the bandits, but because we have absolutely nothing, we could really use a reward, so we're going to take some dried meat here as the prize for winning that battle. We can't do much with that dried meat because it's going to expire before we eat it. We're just 1 person. This is enough meat to feed a small army, so that means we'll want to get rid of it as soon as we can. There's our stats for anyone interested in the numbers of what our starting position is. Now what I'm going to do just to start things off is go up to Benatia and sell off this meat, because if we sell it right away it will get its maximum price and make us a little bit rich actually. However, on the way we were accosted by some deserting troops. We have no chance to fight them, so I'm going to have to bribe them to let us go, which makes us lose all of the money we started with. So now we really do have pretty much nothing at all, apart from that sword we stole from the villa back at the start, which we actually have no ability to wield. We need more strength to even use it in combat. Anyway, so I sell off the meat, and I'm able to buy some more substantial clothing. Now I'm not dressed like a slave, and I've got a bit more armor, so that'll make things go smoother, both in terms of our perceived importance in society, and if we get into a fight, although we will be trying to avoid fights. Luckily enough, I was then able to make it to Tremontium without any further trouble, so now we can meet with Lord Vist, who supposedly knows something about the attack on the villa. After days of walking the wooded trails alone, Rex set eyes on the fortified village of Tremontium, stronghold of the Ottadini tribe and its leader, Vist. The adrenaline of his flight from the villa was a few days past now, leaving nothing to cover the nerves slowing his approach. After a lifetime of following orders, to suddenly strike out on his own like this was truly alien. At least his parents had done something to prepare him for this vast outside world. His grasp of the language was firm enough to get him not just past the guards, but into the hall of Vist himself. Weather-beaten you are. Weather-beaten is good. You are Ottadini? Novente, sir. Novente? Say that name again for me. Novente, in the west around Regionium. That's a Roman accent. Vist's inviting demeanor fled, and two guards shuffled to block the exit. They must be desperate to send a spy as useless as you. I'm not a spy. I'm a slave. I agree. Disgusting. How can a man of honest red hair live in their service? You should have taken your own life. After Rex explained his situation, Lord Vist's mood lightened. Well, slave, you will be saddened to hear that all the captives taken were sold. Sold where? To who? That's something of a confidential matter, slave. But you really want to know, don't you? Yes, please. You speak Latin, don't you? Yes, sir. Good. I have need of men with knowledge of Roman ways. I would know my enemy. You've been to Aboricum before? With my masters, yes. Oh, good, good. I think we can arrange something then, slave. It's Rex. Rex. A fine joke. We are now servants in the army of Lord Vist. We will fight for him as a warrior, and this gives us an opportunity to have access to experience and money despite our very low skills and inability to form parties ourselves. So we'll try and share in the collective glories of the Caledonians. However, they're immediately besieged in Tremontium by a large Roman force. Still, we do achieve something. You get experience for just being in the army, and this allows us to level up to level 2. All important because this means I can buy a level up to strength, giving me 8 strength, enough to wield the sword that was stolen from the villa at the beginning. We've also now got a spear and shield, but that's only on loan from Vist. If we leave the army, we will have to give that stuff back. Soon the siege was broken up by the arrival of Caledonian reinforcements, and we ended up being drawn into a nice one-sided battle. This is what we like to see. So the Caledonians should quite easily beat the Romans here, and we can just watch the battle, hang around, and try and extract some experience from it. You can see we look a lot less prepared than all of the actual warriors because we're such a low level, and we're a low level in the army. The longer we stay in the army, the higher our rank will be, and we'll be given more free, decent equipment, on loan at least. So soon fighting breaks out. The Romans have clustered together, they're very outnumbered, but now they've got a wall of shields surrounding themselves, it's difficult for us to damage them. Their armour does the same thing. Still, we've got plenty of chances to do little raid-like attacks where we just run up and try to hit something and then run away back to safety. And doing so, I am able to inflict some damage and get some experience, even landing a kill, I think, there somewhere. However, a group of mercenary cavalry attacks me from behind. I'm able to dodge out of the way, and then they don't pay me much attention. They're trying to attack the main group. So again, I'm able to cheekily contribute and get some damage, get some experience by just hacking poorly into the mix and eventually landing some blows. At this point, the Roman force breaks what's left of it, and they'll soon be run down as our troops chase them. I'm not going to bother participating in this pursuit. After any major battle, we get a report on how things went, and things went pretty well. As you might imagine, the enemy are gone. They did inflict quite a few casualties on us just because their troop quality was pretty high. We also have to pick a special action to take after a battle from this list here, and right now we're just going to hang out with Vist, not really quite sure what to do after a battle like this. I'm sure he'll show us the way next time. And this allows us to gain extra experience. Sometimes you can gain money or reputation based on what thing you choose at the end of each battle. Soon after that, another battle broke out because the rest of the Roman army in the area was still at large, and we eventually encountered another group. Like that first battle, it's a situation where we have the enemy severely outnumbered, so not much danger. We don't have to put ourselves in much danger, to be more specific. We can just wait around and try to chip away at the enemy while, for the most part, those enemy troops will be distracted by our allies. At the start though, I was split off from the group, and after being run over by a horse, I was almost overrun by the Romans. Luckily I managed to make a quick escape here. Since the Romans are focused so much on the main bulk of our force, I end up behind them and unnoticed, so I'm able to land some damage on their commander, leveling up my one-handed skill. The problem is, once they know that I'm here, I'm very outclassed. I get too close there and take a whole load of damage. Now we're actually quite wounded, so we're going to stay away from them. I'm also now bleeding. That's one of the effects of the mod, so my health will gradually decline as the battle goes on. I come back to try and get another bit of distraction damage. However, this commander's had enough. He finally just engages me, and he's easily able to finish me off with only my little bit of health and relative inability to damage him. So we've been wounded. This means there's a risk we'll have a permanent debuff. However, in this case we're lucky. We are going to recover completely from this wound very quickly as well. Tons of allied casualties, again as the Romans proved their strength in battle even when outnumbered. We did manage to land a kill somewhere in the mix there apparently. This time I'm going to choose the deal with priests, women and companions of the wounded and dead option. Since we are wounded ourselves, it would make sense that we're hanging out with them, and it turns out this increases your reputation. This is like how much you are liked on the world stage, whereas renown is just how famous you are. As you can see, on both counts we have pretty much nothing because we're just some nobody, but hopefully fighting with the army will allow us to build those stats because we will need them to do pretty much anything in the game as it goes on. Very quickly we're thrown into another battle. This time the Romans' disadvantage isn't so large, but we still have the upper hand, so we can be safely assured of victory as long as nothing goes terribly wrong. So more chances to bag some experience and learn some lessons the hard way, and generally get into the swing of life on the border of the Roman Empire. Rex's tunic was soaked through and was pulling him down into the mud with each step. He was grateful not to be wearing chainmail, for now at least. Around him, the warriors of the Caledonian coalition were preparing for another fight with the Romans. This alliance of normally hostile tribes was responsible for the fall of Hadrian's Wall, and their momentum was still strong. After a few weeks among them, Rex had learnt more than he'd ever known about swords, spears and armour. What's more, he was beginning to understand why these men had smiles on their faces on what might be their last night alive. "Roman boy, you ready to stick it to your masters?" his lord asked as he passed by. "Yes, lord. I've been practicing as much as I can." "Practicing? You are like a lamb, Roman. He used to be a slave to the Romans, boys, so let him kill one to get his own back, won't you?" "Come on then!" As foreign as this strange life of freedom and danger was to Rex, the sentiment Vist joked about felt very real. When he saw the Romans in front of him and felt the weight of his sword in his hand, he felt a thrill. Every memory of labours and lashing gave his ill-fed arms strength, and when he felt the shock of an impact with Roman steel rush back down his blade, it quenched and grew his thirst for action both at once. He really was like a lamb, knowing not enough of the world to fear his enemy, and having not enough in the world to fear loss. With a liberated shout and a squelch underfoot, he charged the Roman lines with his new comrades, in the moment forgetting entirely why he was serving Vist at all, and how no amount of revenge on these soldiers could bring his family back. The battle went smoothly because the Romans kept trying to retreat, breaking up their formation, which is of course one of their main strengths. Since they're just going to be slaughtered as they run away, we end up with a decent result, a better result than in the easier battles we took on before. Now after this fight I'm going to go with the looting corpses option to see what it does. As you might guess, it increases the amount of money you get for starters, although it doesn't say how much by. It also though reduces your reputation. Reputation is something like your honour, so that's a shame. We'll have to not use that too much if we are to build a reputation. After the fight I was promoted to Celtic Warrior. I'm already a Celtic Light Warrior, I was promoted from Tribesman right away, but now that I'm a warrior I get given some actual proper gear. We're officially in the force now. The armour they give us is worse than what we had already, so we'll keep our old gear that we bought previously, but the weapons they give us are good. We've got a decent shield and spear, which alongside our sword means we're now pretty well equipped for battle, even if we're not very good at using any of these weapons. The next battle came along pretty quickly because the Romans are still trying to take Tremontium. Our force comes and scatters the army they had in the area, and then we all suddenly rush to the south, apparently doing some sort of counter raid, encountering a Roman army along the coast. Again, we've got a big advantage, so nothing too dangerous. This battle was pretty good for us because the enemy had a load of light troops like these archers who got immediately cut off from the rest of the legionaries by our cavalry. So now we can take easier fights like this against not especially armoured opponents who don't have very good melee weapons either, so things are more balanced, and in these fights we're able to pick up quite a few kills. The cavalry continue to raid here as well, and very quickly these archers are going to be annihilated before they cause too much trouble to the army. After this fight we go and check out the main formation that the enemy had left behind, which was currently being assaulted by my infantry and elements of the cav, and now we can come in to contribute to this fight. It's pretty chaotic, and in fact it looks like we're losing. I have to run away because our forces suddenly fall back just as I arrive. The Romans have held off our first wave, but that's not going to be the end of things. We still have the numbers on our side, and soon everyone starts charging in for another go. I'm going to switch my tactics up and use the spear that I was given when I was promoted. Since its long reach gives me some safety, we can stay back from those short Roman swords and just poke. And with our guys charging in and disrupting their shield wall, eventually this gives us plenty of opportunities to actually deal damage. And soon this battle is going to be turned in our favour. There's their commander on the end of the line. I'm trying to get the kill on him for the added experience and prestige, but someone else picked it up unfortunately. Anyway, that's going to be bringing an end to the battle as we slaughter the last of them. They didn't run away in this fight, they pretty much fought right to the end, probably realising that running away would not be possible. There we have it, that's our best battle so far. We picked up 7 kills and we didn't even get that wounded like we normally do. So excellent stuff from Rex, he's really getting into this now. That said, we are still no closer to achieving our objective. We're building our skills and making ourselves more able to fight our way across the world if we need to, but where we're actually going to go still remains up in the air. Rex will have to try and investigate that matter a bit more with his lord in the next episode. Rex had travelled more than he had ever travelled and seen more than he had ever seen. But he still could not go where he wanted or see what he was looking for. The world was a dangerous place, yet that was precisely why he had to endure it, so that he could find the truth of what happened at the villa and either put his life back together or let go of that past entirely. None of it would be easy, but for a slave with no home or people, neither was anything else. Thank you for watching the first episode of Rex Romanum, and a very special thanks to all of the OfficiallyDevin patrons who make stuff like this possible. This will be a weekly series, starting from now until whenever the tale ends, or whenever we all get bored of it, so I hope you'll join me for the ride. See you next time.